Now it's looking flat, so we're gonna need to give our moss some depth. So over here, I've got 4 petal colors. I've got a moss green, perfect for our moss, a sage, a chartreuse, and a forest green. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a little tray and I'm gonna start mixing those together and putting them on my moss. All right, so I'm gonna take my 4 green colors and I'm gonna put them on the plate so that I can kind of put a little bit of each or mix them up. I just wanna be able to have a variety of colors. And add, actually, you know what? I'm gonna just do a little bit of the forest green. That's a little gray, and I'm not as crazy about that color. And the sage is a little bright, so I'm gonna be really minimal with those 2. I want to really stay more in I'm gonna use those as highlights and shadows as opposed to kind of covering the whole thing. So I've got my 4 colors. I've got kind of it's a stiff brush, but it's also a loose brush. So I'm gonna take it and I'm just gonna start dabbing color powder into this moss. And what's great is that this is also giving it more texture from the same as the brush was. Because you don't want it to be completely flat, because nothing has completely flat color. It has highlights and lowlights. And so we're gonna go in and just kind of brush all different colors in here, like that. Kind of darken it up. You don't want it to be, and if it goes onto the wood, you're not even going to be able to tell. There we go. Now it's starting to look more like moss. Not so much like just green fondant on there. Now I am pushing out a little bit of my nice pointy holes. So once I get all this in here and brushed colors I like it, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add the holes again. And what this does is it gives you even more depth because it's opening up parts of the fondant that haven't been covered with the petal dust. I'll lift my little. And so you get all kinds of depths of dark colors and light colors. And there you have moss. Like that. There you go. All right, so I added a few more pieces of moss. Now you might ask why I put the mushrooms on before the moss, and that's because I wanted the moss to kind of crawl up onto the mushrooms. So if you feel like you want to get under, you can always pull your mushroom right out and then put it back in again after you're done with your moss, but I like to have the moss kind of on the mushrooms as well, so they look like it's kind of crawling around it. And then one of the last things I'm going to do is I don't like how shiny this top is, so I'm going to take, this is just a combination of the cocoa and the sage, and I'm just going to brush it on here a little bit just to take a little bit of that shine off, because when you paint it with vodka, it gives it a little bit of a sheen, and we don't want it to have too much of a sheen. So I'm just going to kind of go in here and just brush a little bit of this in here, which it's not knocking it down completely, but it's knocking it down enough to where it's not completely glossy and shiny. So there we have that. And now the last step is we're going to add sand.